So you were talking about an agent's duties. Can you explain what a real estate agent's duty is to their client? And is it just to their client or does it go beyond that?
Well, so there are certain fiduciary duties that are owed to buyer and seller by their respective agents. The fiduciary duty of loyalty, the fiduciary duty of, disclosure. Like they being sellers have to disclose to you, and the agent has to disclose to you, buyer, whether it's if there are defects on the property, anything.
Whether someone's died in the property.
Right, as long as it's within 1 year, I think. If it's 5 years, I guess you don't have to disclose dead people, but maybe you'd want to know. What else? So
Anything that affects the value or desirability of the property has to be disclosed. So when in doubt, I always advise clients, potential clients, over disclose, overshare. If you're even having any hesitation to understand, do I need to disclose this? Is this necessary? Is
Absolutely.
it legal? That I have to do this? Do it.
Do it, and do it in writing. Always have a record. And what's interesting, I think, is in my experience, I have a case right now, to Sarah's point, where over disclosing was not the norm. It wasn't even a thought. So situation, and I think this actually situation is underappreciated, because we're always thinking about, if Sarah's seller and I'm buyer, I have my agent, and my agent owes a fiduciary duty to me. Sarah's agent owes a fiduciary duty to her, and then there are certain fiduciary duties that seller owes to buyer, because seller has obviously all the information already known to them, having already been living on the property. But what I feel sellers and their agents do not appreciate, and should, because it can lead to breach of contract and rise to the level of fraud, is seller's duty to buyer to disclose. And my case right now is a situation where seller was selling a spec home. So this is a home that is not completed. A developer owned it, and so they were selling the land and then they were developing the home. So buyer comes in to purchase that, and seller failed to disclose to buyer whether or not they could take buyer's funds and pay off the liens on the property.
Wow.
And so had buyer understood that the liens exceeded the purchase price of the home, then obviously buyer would have said, I'm not going to enter into that property, because come closing at escrow, seller's not going to have the funds to pay off the liens, and buyer ends up having to pay off the liens. And my client was in a very terrible situation where not only did this happen and the liens far exceeded to the tune of $500,000 the purchase price of the home, but developer got frustrated and walked off the property. So now buyer is paying a premium to not only get actually, have title transfer to her,
But an incompleted home.
but an incomplete home. And so, what do? Well, you hire a lawyer, but you're in a precarious situation as buyer, because let's say, for example, you say, I'm going to cancel this transaction and I'm not going to buy this home because this is a fraud situation. Great. Now you're out a lot of money you've already put into the deal. You have no idea what seller is going to do. They could file bankruptcy. This property could be lost completely. So it puts the buyer in a situation to have to spend all of this money to get title to the home, to then turn around and sue for damages. And now you're in a lawsuit for 2.5 years. I mean, we are 2.5 years in to this situation, to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees. And it came down to one simple fact. If seller had a conversation with their agent and said, listen, this preliminary title report says liens are X. However, we all know that the true value of the liens are Y. We need to disclose this. And the reason I believe why it wasn't disclosed is, and a lot of real estate transactions get creative like this, seller believed if we sell the property for one price. So let's call it, just for the sake of argument, a $4 million purchase for title to the property. But remember, this house is in development. So there's this side transaction happening where you have, let's call it $500,000 in construction being done. Seller's agent or seller may believe this is a $4.5 million transaction. Our liens on the property are for 4.2, let's say. So we don't have a disclosure issue because the value of the transaction is 4.5. The liens are only 4.2. Easy breezy, lemon squeezy. Doesn't work like that because title transfers for the amount of money that's in the contract. So again, somebody who could slow down and really look at this piecemeal and say, what is the worst thing that could happen here?
Yes.
And I think, and seller's agent is a 20-year veteran in real estate. So this is somebody who assumed she'd understood real estate, she had seen it all, and now we're in this situation where, she may lose her real estate license if it's a non-disclosure issue and she's liable. Well, you can have fraudulent non-disclosure. So it's very serious, and I think that people, especially in high value asset sales, do not appreciate the intricacies. The more complicated the deal, the more I believe people
should
should
an attorney.
Bring in a real estate attorney to walk through that deal, make sure all the contracts are there. Because as litigators, we're not thinking as transactional attorneys, what clause says what word do I need here? We're thinking, what's the worst thing that can happen?
Yes, I try to advise potential clients, think about, before I enter into this deal, before I enter into this agreement, before I sign off to buy this piece of property, what's the worst case scenario? What's the worst thing that could happen? And then once you think about it that way, you could potentially anticipate what some of the issues might be, but you don't know what you don't know. So how do you help people proactively who've maybe never entered into a transaction to buy real estate?
Well, and I think, one of the difficult things is, who do we as buyers or sellers rely on? We're relying on an agent who doesn't think from the perspective of, what does litigation look like? What are the courts saying? And to your point, in this particular transaction, had they gone through that process, this is how I think it would have gone. We've got a construction contract. We have a purchase contract. We have this purchase contract says it's for sale at this amount. What happens if the developer walks off the project? What happens if the purchase price is less than what this entire project it will cost? Because think about in construction, prices change.
Yep.
Things happen. The price of lumber goes up.
Lumber went up tremendously during COVID.
Right. So
the value of property has gone up tremendously in the last year. So how do you account for that?
And you can't. And who's to say a seller knowing? I mean, I think Sarah and I have this issue right now. We have a seller who entered into a contract to sell their property, and for whatever reason, escrow kept getting extended, and now that property has gone up $1 million. Well, why would seller want to honor that contract? Because they've got that much more equity that they could access if they found a new buyer. So I think that as California, the cost of real estate starts going up. It's no longer, in certain communities, Corona del Mar, Newport Beach,
East Side Costa Mesa.
East Side Costa Mesa is a perfect example. You could buy a cute little bungalow home that's 1,000 square feet for under $1 million. Those homes are now $1.7 million. And so as those prices go up, I think you'll start to see the consumer becoming smarter and saying, I have a different relationship to 1.7 million than I did to 700,000.
Absolutely.
Do I want to hire an attorney to walk me through this? Because it's not, people think we're going to cost so much. But if you find the right attorney, it's possible they can get that deal done for exactly what you would have paid the realtor.
Or less. Because if you take a commission, into consideration. Oftentimes I've been able to represent clients and have charged them substantially less than they would have had to pay
Right.
a commission to an agent.
That's a good point, because we are doing things on such a different level, and I think with more, it's more routine for us that we can say this is the flat rate we're going to do this for, and you end up saving money and preventing all of these issues.
Preventing getting yourself into a sticky situation and preventing you from having to hire a real estate attorney such as one of us.
Because it's not going to cost that flat rate once the dispute has happened. That's when, litigation is costly. I tell clients all the time, clients who say, I've been wronged, I want to go to trial. And I said, are you prepared to spend $300,000 to be right? And 98% of cases settle because it's an arduous process, it's emotional, and it's incredibly stressful and expensive.
Yeah.
So if you can plan for that in advance, I would say call an agent, see who would work for you in that regard, and then pick up the phone and call a real estate attorney and say, I'm interested in either buying or selling. What is it going to cost with you, and what does that look like? Because we're likely going to use the same forms. You're a broker.
Yeah.
You can write your own form.
I use the California Association of Realtors forms, and it's not going to cost nearly as much as people might imagine to hire a real estate attorney versus a commission that you would pay out to an agent. So I do oftentimes get people who are first-time home buyers or have a nuanced, detailed transaction that they would like the advisement and advice of a real estate attorney. But obviously you don't need to hire a real estate attorney if you're working with an agent or a broker that is a trusted professional, that is somebody who's reputable, that's somebody who has integrity. But we do see those unscrupulous agents who do not rise to their expectation and do not fulfill their duties to their client.
Well, and it doesn't even have to be unscrupulous. What I think is more often than not is just sloppy and negligent. Property is selling faster, especially in these areas we discussed, than, in my own personal neighborhood, a home can go up for sale and it's under contract within 3 days. So think about the volume the real estate agent is doing. And to them, these contracts are rudimentary. They think they know them. They think they're writing. It's going so fast and on such a volume that I don't think there may be an intent there. There's just I got to get this done. And a lot of times these real estate agents have staff. And so they're having their assistants write the contracts, and who's overseeing it. And what I think is interesting is we have, as attorneys, a higher fiduciary duty to our client.
Yep.
If you want somebody who has their license on the line and who will ensure that they're going to do right by you, why not have, the attorney's license that's giving you that security that they're going to do the right thing? Because I'm not going to write a sloppy document and risk losing my entire firm. And not to say that a lawyer is somehow more important than a real estate agent. I just think we are less likely to put our license at risk because we went through 4 years of university, we went through law school, taking the bar exam was something none of us ever want to do again. It's less easy come to us. No disrespect to real estate agents. It's just a difference in classification or licensing.
And I think that's a problem that I'm seeing, and I'm sure you're seeing, is that due to the frantic pace of the market and how fast the turnaround time is between a listing and going into escrow, we see people make these mistakes. When human beings are in a rush, you tend to make mistakes. And so there might not be any intent, but if you're being sloppy, you can be negligent, you could just miss something. That's when mistakes happen. So it's important to take a step back and to really read through what you're doing and understand the consequences of what you're signing.
Right. And to your point, think at that fast pace, if you're in a negotiation, if a buyer and seller are in negotiation with each other, it's not, here's my offer, I'm giving you 7 days to respond. It's, you have until close of business day tomorrow. And if I'm being given that short of a deadline, and I have work to do, and I have a family to care for, and I have all of this to juggle, I can't be completely, with my present sense of like focus, because I'm completely distracted. And you would rely on the agent then to interpret, but again, they want to get this closed. And and seller would know that there's somebody right around the corner that's going to take the deal if you don't. I mean, I have a situation in my neighborhood right now where the home went on, was listed and went for $400,000 more than the listing price.
Wow.
That's the market right now.
Yeah, it's insane.
And I just feel like, I cringe because I think, oof, I hope they read that contract. I hope everything went well, because we're no longer, especially here in the beach communities, dealing with $700,000, $500,000 properties.
It's a significant investment, and
Yes.
you want to protect that investment at all costs. And sometimes that means having an attorney review and advise you on what to do. And when you're dealing with $3, $4, $5, $6, $7 million properties, that's when we get clients who want to retain us and walk them through that process. And then to understand, Kimberly on some of her work, she can create a tax mitigation strategy for them. So can you talk a little bit about what that looks like?
Well, what Sarah is referring to, first of all, is Revolve's concierge service. So another thing that distinguishes using attorneys over real estate agents is when, your transaction comes to our desk, we're looking at this holistically. It's not just about this single transaction and you selling your home. It's about, how does this sale affect your entire net worth, your retirement plan, your, just estate planning. We come in and look at this completely from the perspective of, what is the best deal for you in selling this? We're going to work the contracts. We're going to ensure that, everything is disclosed, and we're going to handhold you in a way that makes you feel protected legally. But also, we're going to look at that and say, are there any ways that you can mitigate these capital gains? Is there a private retirement plan that can be created, that you can sell this home under this private retirement plan such that proceeds, become retirement funds, which can lead to, non-taxable events? Is there a way to create an estate plan to further protect these funds? I mean, we're thinking of this from every single angle you can imagine. So it's not a, single lane, sell your home, escrow closes, goodbye, see you later. It's, do you need an estate plan? Do you need tax mitigation strategies? What is happening in your world that this transaction will affect? And I think that, when it came down to creating Revolve, that's why the name Revolve was important to me, because I wanted clients to know that you hire Sarah and I, and our world revolves around you. We are looking at your entire world and what we can do for you. And I think, that's really what sets us apart in many ways.
Absolutely. I love it. I love that we view every situation from a 360-degree view. And that we're so responsive and put our clients first, that we know if you're hiring us, you're potentially in a bad situation and you need somebody that's going to be responsive, trustworthy, guide you through what that looks like, be empathetic. That's what I really love about Revolve.
Well, thank you.